Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Energy Expert webinar. My name is Beth, and I'll be your host this afternoon. We'd like to start off with a safety moment. Safety is a core value of PGE, and we want to remind you to be safe around electricity. As you consider installing or retrofitting new equipment, please keep safety in mind. We would also like to encourage your family and staff to be prepared with an outage kit. And you can visit our website for more safety information at portlandgeneral.com/safety. We would also like to thank the Energy Trust of Oregon and the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance for their support in co-sponsoring this series of free energy efficiency trainings that are open to all Northwest utilities and their customers. Before I introduce this afternoon's presenters, I'd like to show you some tools you'll be using during the webinar. To the right of your screen, you'll see several windows: the participants window, the chat window, and a polling window which will appear at the end of the session. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can submit them to me, the host, through chat, and I'll ask them of the presenters at the end of the webinar. However, because this is a very informal session today, and you'll be discussing software that you all have, you may mute or unmute yourself and ask questions of the presenter directly if you would like. Or you can submit a question to me through chat as stated previously. And now I would like to introduce the presenters this morning. Gina Lindsay is Energy Expert Product Manager with Northright Incorporated. Gina has been with Northright since 2007. She specializes in providing energy management solutions for small to mid-sized commercial buildings. Her background and expertise includes project management of energy savings programs and projects, as well as energy application support and training. Will Miller is Energy Information Services Specialist at Portland General Electric, and Will specializes in providing operational and analytical support to PGE customers who monitor their energy use. His area of expertise at PGE is in energy information services and web-based power quality monitoring. Will is also a member of the Association of Professional Energy Managers, APEM, and has a BS from Portland State University. And now I'd like to hand the presentation over to Gina, but while I'm doing that, I just wanted to remind you all that this is a webinar for people who currently have Energy Expert or who are interested in getting Energy Expert. All of you who are Energy Expert customers have access to this new version that we'll be discussing today. And if you have any questions about that changeover, you can ask those questions of Gina or Will when they start presenting. So at this time, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Gina.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Hello, everyone. And I just wanted to, before I launch into the application, we'll go over a few introductory slides here. But like Beth said, please feel free to stop me if I'm going along too fast or you have a question along the way. I'm happy to answer them as we go through this. But before we go into the tools themselves, I just wanted to kind of open with some of the issues that using interval data can actually help answer. And so when we look through some of these charts and graphs, you'll see some of these things are addressed by the different tools available through energy modeling and through energy charting that we're about to show you. And some specific issues that Will actually is going to cover of real-world examples of some customers in the field that have reported or we've identified looking through the different views available using the tools of some of these issues that are found periodically that he'll go through using some slides later on after we go through some of the navigation and capabilities of the two applications I'll be showing you. And finally here we have the something included in the packet that we'll be sending you is the facility checklist. And that is something you can use, and it's just available if you want to use it to provide your operating schedules in comparison to what the charts are actually showing you within Energy Expert, just to make sure that those match and line up, so that if there are any issues with data, you can let us know. But this is just something additional that we provided in that packet. So I'll go ahead and open up the Energy Expert applications, and that is going to be using a different URL than you're accustomed to. At the old legacy version, we would have been going to www.myworksite.com, and in this case, we'll be using www.northrightInc.com.
And I share my desktop so that you can see that that application, I wanted to let you know at this point, if you have questions that you'd like to ask Gina, you no longer see your mute unmute button, but the way you can access this is if you'll see you are sharing your, or you'll see a green tab at the top of your screen. If you hover over that, there'll be a drop-down menu that will appear. If you want to ask questions of Gina, you can click the Unmute Me button, and you will then be able to speak. Thank you.
Okay, and so this is an example of the login screen that you would receive once you're at that URL. And I'm going to go ahead and log in as a demonstration user, and this is what I would see at my desktop. And you'll see at the top here we have the dashboard, energy modeling, and energy charting tools. And you can organize these however you want to. You can just drag and drop them. This is how I have them organized. These are some of the more administrative tools, and I'll be showing you these shortly. And then down at the bottom here we have a document manager tool and a support tool. So first of all, this my profile icon here, when we click on this, this just brings up a simple form, and this would be probably the first step in just establishing your personal information and how you want to receive some of the data that comes from the Energy Expert tools. So we'll be showing you how to do the notifications if you don't have those set up already. This would be how you would specify where those notifications would go. And this can be multiple email addresses separated by a semicolon and a space. So if you do have people outside the organization, you can add them here. And then the box down here that I'm pointing to, this would enable those notifications. So even if we have the information, if we don't have that enabled, those notifications won't go out. But that's just to give you some flexibility of turning those on and off without removing the information that you've got in the email field. So also, if you want to change your username and password, this is where you would do that as well. And going back to the desktop, just going to show you real quick some support options that we have available for anyone that isn't able to attend a training. There are a lot of additional documentation available as far as either written or in video format. So each of these links here are the tools available for you, and as you click into these, it will open up a page that has a thumbnail of the videos that have been recorded for various functionality available within each tool. And these are about 2 to 3 minutes, short instructional videos on various functionality. And then this link up here is written help content. So you have a couple different ways of accessing some instructional material there. And then, as I said, these were some administrative applications. If you do have some schedules set up, and I'll be showing you how to do that, this is an application that just lets you administer that. It's very straightforward. We do have the video on that as well. So I probably won't be covering that unless anyone has specific questions, but that's available too. And then the dashboard is sort of kind of interacts with both the energy modeling and the energy charting tools, and I'll be showing you that as well. But first, we'll go into the energy modeling tool, and we launch right into it. As you load this, I've already loaded it today, so it brought me right in, but it will initially take you about a minute or so to load that initially. And what I'm seeing here is the demonstration site at the building level, and I'm going to just move this up to the top level. However, whatever I've selected here in the left navigation would determine the data on the right here. And what I'm seeing here is a scorecard view. This is the scorecard view selection as my default screen. And this shows a multi-site organization. So we see that there are multiple sites being charted here. And I can filter this to get all of the buildings in the site list here. And the first thing you'll notice, there's a lot of green here. And what this is saying is that for the time period selected, and we have the month of October here, and for the whole organization, this was the actual energy consumption for that period as compared to the expected energy consumption. So it was within a 10% difference. So the performance of that period is rated okay. We have a deviation band of a 10% range as a default, and so as long as the actual and expected energy is within that 10% range, it would be marked as a green or okay day. And as soon as you go outside those deviations would indicate a high or a low day. And in this case, we don't have any high days. We just have all within the range, the normal range, and one here that's was actually below the normal range of consumption. And so how that's calculated is on an hourly basis, and this is according to the interval data for the baseline period and in relation to the hourly temperatures for that particular day and hour. So that's calculated on a 24-hour basis to give you this performance rating for the day. This is the multi-site view, and you can see we've also got multiple day range here for a whole month. And so what we're seeing down here in the consumption chart is again, all normal days. We've got a green band here representing that normal range, and we fell within that normal range for that whole period. But I'm going to change the date selection here to a custom period, and this just allows you to type in or select from the calendar view some specific dates that you want to look at, so you don't have to select from the available ranges. You can actually put in a custom date here. So I'm just going to type that in directly. And then you just be sure to hit Set Custom. It won't refresh and reload until you've hit that button. But now we see that for this different range of dates, we see that we do have a high day here. And actually, for the organization as a whole, running in the high range, outside this green area, that's the expected normal range of consumption. And as we roll over these different color-coded bars, we should get, for some reason, I think in the meeting format here, there is a tooltip that comes up for you that would describe the address and actual energy values for each site. So again, this would just be for a location that has multiple sites available. So now I'm going to just drill down into a more specific level into the building. And for some people who have multiple meters, they would need to drill even further. And so for a sub-meter, in this particular instance, there's only 1 meter per building, so you're going to see the same data at each level. But for anybody that has multiple meters within a building, they would just need to select the appropriate energy expert node here. And this, again, we're still at a multi-day range, and you can see there's a pattern here with their startup on Sunday night and Monday. So things are kind of normal for this site through the week. This is a Saturday, I believe, and these are Sundays. So we're seeing a definite issue here with this being a high day, and these all falling in the normal range. And you probably gathered the yellow line is the actual consumption for this building. And we can see the impact of this too in terms of cost. So in this case, over this period of time, the difference in energy consumption between what the models expected and the actual was a negative 15,990 kilowatt hours. And that translates using a blended rate that we get from PGE that we put in to the software according to the location. That comes out to a negative 1279. So we're able to calculate that in terms of dollars as well as energy. So now I'm going to just jump over to the calendar to show you this same pattern over in the calendar view, to kind of give you an example of how you would see the same issues that are happening at this building. And since we were seeing those red days on Sundays and Mondays, that's also what we're seeing here in the startup on Monday is a really early startup. So maybe they're starting earlier than normal, but that's what the model's telling us, is that on these particular days, in relationship to their baseline, the facility is using more energy than usual, and it's been given a high overall day. And you can also see at the hourly level how that changes from a red to certain parts of the day are actually normal or low. So you can look down to an hourly level of what the performance is for a particular site. And while I'm on this view too, I'll just show you what this little yellow indicator here is, and that allows you to see if there's been any notations made, so to address any particular anomalies or issues that are identified. Rolling over that little icon will show you what the note was that was left. And in this case, we weren't really sure what happened at this building, but assumed that maybe a schedule was left running, and this could be confirmed by a facility manager. But the note was actually input by clicking on this little notebook icon up at the top. That brings up a pop-up, so you would have to have your pop-ups enabled so that you can see this interactive screen. But this is the current note, so we can actually click on that to add more detail. If we had that available, we can continue to make notes on that. Or we can actually add another entry. So that's the functionality of the note taking. And if there, in this case, there is a significant day that you probably want to look at more detail on. There's a few here, but I'll just click on the 11th here, and this will take us to the load profile, the demand profile for that particular day, and give us a little more detail about what's going on. So typically, the model's saying the actual should have continued throughout the day as a flat line, but on this particular day, looks like it was occupied, or at least the schedule said the building was going to be occupied. And so this gives us the 24-hour detailed look at that. Some other charting options are the demand profile. And this one is model independent. This is just charting the actual data in relation to different parameters that are available here on the left, where you can trace over different profiles within the data set that we have available. So if you have several years of data, we're able to look at averages over a longer period of time. And you can also trace that with a comparison from weekday to weekend. So this is your selected day. This can also be a range of day. This just happens to be a single day, and we can expand this to include multiple days. and you can see it just adds more of the load profiles um, prior to the selected day. As you roll over these, you can actually get a tooltip that would come up, and again, I think with the meeting format, they're not coming up for some reason, but hopefully in your own, that there they are. There's a bit of a delay, I think. So these will provide the dates of the actual loads here. And then if I want to trace that against an average, since this is a Monday, I might want to look at the Monday average. It would trace that in a different color. So this is the light blue line here. So it was a lot higher. And of course, as you're looking at this, you can back up your selected day however you want using the buttons up at the top. We can also just look at the weekday average, so not just a Monday, but the actual weekday. And so that's really similar to that Monday average, like we would expect. Some of the other charting functions available, one that's useful, especially if you're doing any improvements in the facility, it can actually measure the impact of those. And what this chart does is provides a visual of the savings, the cumulative savings that result from whatever that improvement was. And so, again, you probably have a custom period, or maybe it was, you might want to look at your whole post-baseline period to see what the savings are. So that's going to be different for everyone, but we'll just say, in this case, we'll look at the entire year-to-date savings. And for this building, I wouldn't expect it to be a positive one since we saw a lot of red days. That's going to correlate to a cost and not a savings, of course. So the line will go probably from left to right, downward, instead of left to right, upward, which is what we want to see. But this is how you would use this particular chart to assess the impact of any energy savings measures that were put in place. And since it's a whole year, I think that's why it's taking a little bit of time. There we go. So we can see it really didn't. It was pretty flat here until the warmer months. They really had some issues, and we kind of saw that in August for sure. So looks like they have a little work to do here, but and if you want to see the relationship in terms of cost, and again, this is using that blended rate that we get from PGE by the meter, and so in terms of cost for this site for this year, it's over $6,000. So, moving on to some other charts that are available. The emissions CUSUM is another one that you may or may not use, but it is there for your use or reporting. This chart just provides a tracking of the emissions that are put out per kWh, and so depending on the time period selected, this would be the total CO2. We also do the other greenhouse gases here, but the default setting is going to be at CO2. And I have this does retain the last date range selection, so I'm still on the entire year, so that's why we've got a little delay here. But when this displays, we have charting of the actual CO2 emissions, and then we can also look at it in terms of the model and show how it's reduced. So this is a factor of the performance at that meter. So we're always going to be accumulating CO2 emissions, but the red line is there to show the savings trend. And in this case, like we saw before, we had a downward savings trend. So we don't have positive reductions, we have negative reductions. So it is going in that same relationship curve as we saw on the CUSUM chart. And if anyone has any questions up to now, I just stop for a moment and see if anybody. Sometimes I rush through this, so. And if no questions, I'm going to just change my date range selection here. And I was just realizing that we were looking at a multi-site location before, and I never really showed you a single site. And this is what you would see on your scorecard view. Either if you navigate to a single site or you only have one, this would be what you would see. And here we're seeing that same issue that we saw earlier with the startup at 1 a.m. And while I'm here, I'm just going to go over the reporting functionality. We either have these already, these are some canned reports, the enterprise summary or the daily details. And these just provide kind of just another way of looking at the data over time. It also lets you drill into the data so that you can see what's going on hour by hour, and even at the data collection that we're using to determine that expected energy value that you see on the scorecard. So this this report is something you can export and share as a PDF or an Excel file, several different formats here available. But it also lets you kind of look visually to see what's going on, especially for a multi-site location. This will give you kind of a look at maybe a trend that's going on for a period of time. And I think I'm getting that delay again here. There we go. So once this displays, we'll see this is just for one site. And it's going to give us a single day. And so once we drill into that, we can break it down into a 24-hour period. So each hour is broken down by what the expected energy use was and the actual energy use. And then it will also let us go even further into the data. So it kind of, for people that kind of want to know how the model is working and how that calculation is made, we've included it in this report. And it typically doesn't take this long. Well, I can come back to this. I think there is maybe some kind of issue here. Going back to the scorecard, another option for, while we're on the subject of reporting, is the X-carding functionality. And if any of you have already set these up, you've put in your email address and you've enabled the box that allows the notifications to come through on the My Profile application. And once you've done that, you can start customizing what views you want to appear as a scheduled X card. So I'm just waiting for that screen to come back. We'll give it a minute here. If it doesn't. And so these X cards will show up in your dashboard, and I'll show you that too, how those display as thumbnails that you can delete and manage your scheduled X cards, and they also show up in your inbox. So I'm going to, I think since I'm having some issues here, I'm going to just relog in So you might have to bear with me here for just a moment. Um, and so as I was mentioning earlier, I'd already loaded some of these, so now you're going to experience the actual loading of each of the tools. But I first thought I would just go into the dashboard, since we were talking about how the X cards render to your dashboard. So this is what this demonstration site that we're in, some of the X cards that I've taken and scheduled will show up as thumbnails, where they can be, like I said, managed here, or when we showed you the desktop in the beginning, there was a My X Cards application. That's just an alternate way of managing your X cards and your X card schedules, because they will accumulate, especially if you have the daily X cards coming to you. So they can be deleted via the dashboard. This will also serve as a way to launch back into the application. So if, for instance, the issue that we saw at the building 2 in August, we might have taken an X card of that just as a single screenshot, and that would appear here in the carousel, and you would be able to come back to that and launch right back to that same scorecard view if you wanted to. Oh, and it would also go to your email box if you wanted to forward that around to other folks in the organization. That's kind of the intent behind that. So this will launch you back into the application. I'm highlighting this little calendar icon. This will delete your schedule if you have a daily, if this one, for example, is a daily schedule of the scorecard. This would delete that, and this would just delete the thumbnail from your carousel. So I'll just go ahead and actually, it does let you confirm your deletion, so I'll cancel that. And I'll go ahead and launch back into the application. So this will get us back into Energy Expert. And I've pretty much gone through all the functionalities I think that I plan to show. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, I'll pass this back over to Will, who has some specific examples of some of the issues and problems with scheduling that he's been able to see with some real customers.
Okay, thanks, Gina. And like she said, I'll be going over some specific examples we found both recently and in years past. This one right here is what is a scorecard example. This customer, I was tapping to take a look at the application one day, and I noticed this customer had an odd startup. You see down here at around 5 p.m., you'll see it starts to get a higher load, and this is on a Sunday when it's normally closed and unoccupied. So this struck me as kind of odd. Here's another way of looking at it. I was looking at that first day, and okay, so you'll see it over on the left-hand side here by the arrow, and it shows the ramp up on that day. And as you notice, the previous days, none of them, if you look at both Saturday and Sunday, you'll notice that they don't have days like this. If you go forward a month, you'll see every Sunday since that June 30th is like that as well. And I thought, boy, this is sure strange. I looked back even a year back to the same months, and they didn't have this either. So I kept going, and August had it as well. And I thought, boy, that's just strange. You know, maybe I should call the customer, see if there's anything wrong. And so, you know, I notified the customer first week of September, or I should say on the 10th, and I mentioned, you know, well, I'm seeing this, you know, odd startup on a Sunday. Do you guys have anything going? Is there a different type of event going on? And they said, no, everything is business as usual, and should be nothing going on Sunday. And so they put their HVAC tech on it, and so this is kind of what they found. So the technician found that 3 main air handlers for that building were put on a schedule to start at approximately 6 p.m. and shut off at approximately midnight on Sundays. Schedule was programmed sometime in the week prior to June 30th, and it looks like the schedule was added for a special event and just not removed. The technician then removed that schedule from the Sunday from the controls, and that, in essence, stopped the rise in power, on Sunday evening. So, looking at this, going back, so we had 11 Sundays that ramped up for no reason at approximately 1,000 kilowatt hours per Sunday. If you add that up, over just those couple months of times, it was an extra $710 they spent on energy when they didn't need to. If this would have been left uncorrected, it would have cost them an extra $3,354 a year approximately. This next one, you'll notice in the calendar screen here, you'll notice on the 15th, the load looks normal up until it comes back to the shutdown, and you'll see it doesn't really shut down. It just keeps just as high. You'll notice the red along there going into the 16th, and we asked the customer, what happened here, and they were having troubles rebooting the controls, and so they ended up fixing it, and it returned back to normal on the 17th. Similar, we have another calendar example. We have a weekend situation where you see Saturdays and Sundays have a ramp up of power. Talked to the customer. They said, "Oh, well, this is okay. This is for a regular event. We, after hours, we run the HVAC system, and we actually bill our tenant for that. So this was okay. But still, you'd see how this might be, something to check out." Looking at this next calendar example, you'll see these days colored in gray. Now, that kind of looks odd, and you'll see down here it says forecast. Forecast is usually when there is no data, and it relies on the model for forecasting a usage set going forward. But this is an example where the weather data was outside of its normal range, and so the tool does not give it a rating. So this was actually, you'll see during a heat wave, they have the HVAC running 24/7. As you'll see down here, the 26th going into the 27th, the load does not drop down as usual and stays up pretty higher, trying to keep the building to a comfortable temperature. On the flip side of that, we have an example here. It was a cold spell, and you'll notice the days in gray as well, where the facility person there was just trying to keep the temperature in the building, at a decent level and not too cold. So it obviously used more power, and in which here again the temperature was out of range. So it was colder than normal, so it didn't calculate a high, low, or okay. Okay, the next one, this is a demand profile analysis or example. So as you'll see here, the green line, this is September 15th to 16th in this green one right here. And so if you were, had over an 1,100 kilowatt hour increase, and where would you start to look? This is a perfect example. You see the baseline, or I should say the base load, is much higher. Normally it looks like around, or on a regular Monday, you'll see it's down at down here at about 30 kW. Here on 9/15, you'll see it at 120. So I mean, this to me would be a red flag. And just for reference, you have the weekday average in yellow. So this 915 is way higher than the normal range. Okay, I think this one is basically similar. We have a customer who had a series of furlough days. I was looking at their calendar as well as their demand profile analysis, and looks like this Friday, which was the actual furlough day, comes up about 150 kW at its peak. The Friday average, granted, is usually closer to 250. However, if you look down here, you'll see the turquoise line. That is the weekend average. So if it is an actual furlough day and there's nothing going on and it's occupied, does it really have to be that high? Why can't it be like the weekend? This is just another question, you know, just something to ask yourself. Okay, this last example, we have a CUSUM example where the customer, you'll notice the CUSUM is, they're doing great. They're going into positive savings, going from the left and upwards to the right. You'll also see the CUSUM go down a little bit around September, and then looks like fix itself and go and start returning to savings again. This was again the the one where they had trouble rebooting the controls. So they had fixed that, but like I said, you can see this in multiple reports. This is just ways of checking, making sure everything is good and how it should be. You could obviously from this example, especially, you can tell from the calendar example as well as the CUSUM that something wasn't right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this back to Gina, and she will go over the energy charting portion of Energy Expert for you, and I will pass it back to her.
Thanks, Will. So I think what I'll do is try to get back to the reports that I couldn't show you earlier. And since we're back in Energy Expert anyway, just before I go into the energy charting tool, just try it again here to see if we can get the daily details report to display, because this can be a really helpful tool, especially for an organization with a lot of different buildings, because as you can see, it kind of gives you a quick, at-a-glance view of some issues across the portfolio. So this gray area, like Will was saying, this can indicate no data, and I think that's probably what the case is here. It can also indicate when, as Will explained, if there is data but the model wasn't able to find similar days within that same temperature range at each hour, then the model would equate the actual to the expected. We don't predict or we don't provide a performance rating, and that can get confusing. So if there is any questions on that, if that comes up on any of your data, we can explain that. It's also explained in the training guide that you'll be receiving. But anyway, so the color patterns here just give you an idea of what's happening hour by hour, and this is just the course of one day. We can also look at this multiple days. And you can even drill into a particular hour. So maybe for these high days, you might be interested in seeing more detail. So I'm going to actually click on that box. And what will render here is the actual data that was collected to calculate that hourly expected consumption value. And this is just included because sometimes there are questions about how the model calculates that expected range. So we'll drill in. This is just another way of looking at the hourly data. It gives you the actual expected, the difference. And so I'm going to drill into that 12 o'clock hour. And so this is all of the data within the baseline period at the 12 o'clock hour. that matched the weather data. So within a 5-degree range, all the interval data that was it that occurred at that weather range is pulled, and we use the median for all of the data to determine the expected consumption for that particular hour and day of the week. So this model looks at time of day, day of week, and weather. So that's probably more information than most people need, but it is there if you're ever asked to explain that or want to understand the model more more clearly. So now I'll go back to the energy charting tool. That was next one we were going to look at, and that's this icon here on your desktop. And so that'll take a second here to load. And these charts are, again, going to determine what data is displayed here on the right by what selection is made on the left here in the tree. And just like within Energy Expert, as you drill into the tree, you'll expand the meters available within a building, or if you have a multi-level organization, you can arrange this however you want to. In this case, we just have 5 building locations and a single meter at each building. Again, looking at building 2, I'm just going to go through some of the charting capabilities that we have. First of all, probably the main chart that I think has probably most of the functionality kind of available in this single chart. This is a multi-point chart that allows you to look at a single point compared to itself, or you can look at points across the organization. And this message here of no data available, this is the current day. We don't have a data logger for this particular site. These are, we're acquiring the data through files that we receive at the end of the day. So the earliest date available we would have would be for yesterday. This is not always true for everyone, depending on how we're getting the data. But in this case, we have yesterday's data. This is the load profile for that single day. And we can look, by pulling the edit panel down, we can look at a variety of different date ranges. These rolling last 7, 14, and 31 days was just recently added after receiving some input from a user. So this was a very recent addition, so able to look at the last 7 days from the current day. And we can chart this against another building by just clicking on the selection on the left. And you'll see a little dialog box will appear if you want to confirm to add that new data series. And you just click on that, and it's going to chart the second point as well as an aggregate of both points in black here. As you roll over these different plots, it will provide the identification of the site as well as the value and the time associated with the demand value. And click on this edit panel again. I can change some of my selections here and customize the data in terms of the aggregation, the time range, and even the points available. So first of all, looking at the time aggregation, the default is to do no aggregation. So depending on how we're receiving the data, and that's typically in a 15-minute interval, you're going to see the data plotted in those 15-minute intervals. But depending on the time frame you're looking at, you may want a more coarse or more refined interval time aggregation. So you can do hourly, daily, monthly, or annually. And then we can also do no aggregation. We can sum, average, or do a minimum or maximum. And then if you don't want to see that combined series, you can actually turn that off here. And once you just click outside the edit panel, it will redraw with only the data points without the combined series displayed. One use of this chart that I always like to show people, because it isn't super intuitive or obvious, is to chart the same point on a repetitive basis so that you can do a time offset of that same point. So I deleted building 3, and I want to just chart this building 2 in different time offsets. So you just repeat the selection and repeat that same sequence of adding the new series and confirming the series. It's going to draw over itself, so you're, of course, not going to see each plot. And then going back to the edit panel, you can edit these individual points. So we'll leave the first one alone, and then we'll click on the edit link for the second series. And I'm just going to select a different time offset. Maybe since we're looking at the last 7 days, you might want to just change this to a single day so it makes it a little more clear what you're looking at. But we'll do a 2 weeks prior, and that will chart that point 2 weeks prior to the last 7 days. And so you can really identify some issues here. It's very different than that first data series. And then if we want to see another, we'll click on the edit link for the third data point and select another time offset of maybe 2 months prior. We'll just randomly choose that. You can change the look and width and color of the line too if you're interested in making sure it stands out, but the application will choose one for you, of course, too. And then, so probably if we're selecting a single day, it's probably easier to calculate what those date periods are reflecting, but you can actually roll over them too and get what that data is. And you can click on I'm not getting the tooltip here, but you can actually click on the report heading. Oh, there's the delay. So here's the rollover tooltip that provides you what time and value you're looking at. And the report heading is available across all charts within the energy charting tool, and this just gives you the actual data for each plot within the chart. So we had 3 different data points, so this would give us all three points, and it distinguishes what time offset that we selected here in this column. You can also export this, so if you want an Excel file to manipulate the data, or just download that, the export feature will allow you to keep that data. And so I'm just going to close that out and close the aggregate peak load chart as well. Then go down the list here. The next one is a building summary, and that's probably more applicable to a multi-site location. So I'm going to go back up to the enterprise level and choose the building summary chart. And this one just gives you a different way of looking at overall consumption by building. And this can be also different energy metrics are available within this chart, but the default view is going to be total energy. You can see this building 5 we're not sure if this is an anomaly or this is an actual typical consumption, but you can see this kind of throws off the scaling just a little because of the variance here. But this is showing us the Monday or the full week of data, but we can actually filter that to include different day types. If you're interested in just looking at weekends, just deselect the weekdays and we'll draw that. Also, as I said, this would be different energy metrics or power. So different options available are listed here, as well as energy and power intensity. And so as long as we are able to get your square footage of your building, we can input that and we can provide you with those metrics. And that's available on the scorecard too. I think I might have passed over that, but the tool will actually show peak demand and peak energy use index as well. The next chart is the daily load profile. This one is a single point chart. This allows you to look at a single day of interest in comparison to a date range. And again, we're on the, I think we're on a floating last 7 days. So I'm just going to choose last week. And I'm going to choose the filters. This lets you add a weekday, weekend average, and a peak day. And again, you can filter this by day type. And we see there's no blue day here because we're actually on the current day. So I'll just back that up 1 day so that we can, our selected day where we actually have data will display in comparison to those averages. So just another way to kind of identify issues. And we see that spike on the 22nd. So that might be something to look into if that's real or there's a data issue or it looks like it didn't last long. But moving down the chart list, we have a load duration chart. And this one is also a multi-point chart, so you can, we're charting the whole enterprise, power use in relation to percentage of the day. Well, actually, this is a percentage of the week. So this might be something you'd want to look at in terms of a single day. I'll look at yesterday. And I can trace this against a single point. And so again, it's going to confirm if I want to add that. And it's going to chart both of them. And so just another way to kind of examine overall power use and over the course of a time period selected. We have a big variance here. So again, I'm going to just go up to my edit panel and delete the PG demonstration, the enterprise point, so that we can look at this in a little more detail. And so, you know, right away we see that, you know, here's the base load at about 151 kW, and that's the base load occurring for about at least 90% of the day. So, next chart, I wanted to show you the power and weather, and this one is going to edit you if you're anywhere above a building level, because we are going to be looking at weather stations by location. So have to be at a building or point level in order to get this power and weather chart to display. And this just pulls the hourly weather data that we get from your nearest weather station. In most cases, that's going to be the Portland International Airport. But depending on your address, would determine the weather data that we're receiving for both this chart as well as for the model data that we're using in the energy modeling tool. And this is kind of a different weather chart where it is in relationship to power use, but it is also a way to access the weather data if you want to download that from the site. This is where you can retrieve that data in 15-minute intervals, or however you want to actually receive it. We can change the aggregation for hourly if you want hourly data. And I think it's going to go here very soon. If it doesn't, I'll move to a different chart here. But this one is also a multi-point chart where you can trace over the different locations using the same process of just highlighting it over on the left, confirming to add it to the chart, and it will display in a different color and provide a color-coded legend on the bottom so that you can follow what you've just added. So the functionality is pretty much repeatable throughout the application. And I am going to just get out of that one, come back to it here. These other two options with the horizontal menus here are the more templated charts available. So the daily aggregation, the time aggregations are pre-selected. So you can choose from either the, daily aggregations or hourly aggregations. And so looking at hourly, we'll go ahead and look at yesterday's chart. And these will give you an overall consumption line in relation to an average, a max, and a minimum. And it does look like I'm having some connection issues. I think that's why I'm kind of stalling here, but hopefully we'll get this to render. But while I'm waiting for that, I'll just show you some of the other options here with the usage variance. So the usage variance is not going to give you the average and minimum and maximum, but it will give you a comparison between the different time frames available. So it's a daily, a monthly, or an annual comparison chart. And I still see it looking to connect here, so I'm going to refresh that. See if I can get the hourly here. And these charts, the idea behind these templated charts was just to sort of alleviate the steps that you'd have to take to. These would be the most common aggregations that I think are typically used. So they're available as a menu instead of as a preset menu rather than having to go through and make those selections manually. And so that's the idea behind the templated charts. And I don't think, here it comes, I think. So in this particular case, there's not a whole lot of difference between the average, the minimum, and the maximum. So we don't see a lot of variance here, but it is giving you the hourly consumption as compared to the minimum and maximum. So depending on what time frame you're looking at, you might see more variation here. And then again, all of this data is available as a report format, exportable report format. And then just to give you an idea what the usage variance looks like too, we can do this week versus last week. And again, this would be a daily aggregation, so it's just giving us the, since we aren't finished with this week, this blue line doesn't continue, but as you roll over this, it will actually give you the actual values for that day. And finally, the last option here is the miscellaneous charts. And these are really just some ways to look at raw data. The one I'll go through is the single point viewer. This is one where it allows you to add alarm limits to a meter that would notify you in case you do exceed those. So you do have to be over here on the left-hand navigation. We have to be at an engineering point in order to assign those threshold levels. So it would edit you if you're at a building or an enterprise level. You wouldn't be able to access the single point chart. But I'm highlighted here on an electric energy point, and I'm going to select the single point viewer. And first it's going to just chart that data series here for me for yesterday. And then if I want to set up an alarm for this meter, I go to the edit panel again, and down here on the lower left is a monitors icon. I click on that, and I'll get a form here that will allow me to set up a high or a low value in all these different units available. So this can be energy or demand, and entering this value and populating the Create X card checkbox would allow the X card to be delivered to the email address that you specified in the My Profile application when the event is triggered. So depending on how we're getting the data and what time of day the event occurs, you would receive the chart would be indicated that it would be an alarm status if it's above, if your load profile is above that alarm limit. And then you'd also be getting a notification in your email. And I should have mentioned too, this can be specified in terms of duration as well. So the default selection there is as soon as you receive that, as soon as the power or energy exceeds your value limit in a 15-minute interval, we'll be sending you that notification. But depending on the duration, the notification wouldn't go out until the power or energy consumption continues for these different periods that you can select. So that's just a way of kind of automating your actual hourly consumption by getting an email alert. And some other headings up here we haven't gone over. The snapshot is similar to the X card that we took in energy modeling. This will also take a snapshot view of this chart and put that on your desktop. And you can also schedule an X card the same way we had before in energy modeling. If there's a chart here that you want to receive on a recurring basis, you can do that by scheduling the X card. And so I think that brings us to pretty much the end of what I was going to cover, but I guess I would pause and just see if there's anything that I missed or that anyone wanted me to cover. And no, so I'll pass the presentation back to Beth then.
Thanks, Gina. Sorry there for the delay. I wanted to thank Gina and see if she wanted to speak to any of these points here in terms of steps to success.
Sure. Yeah, I forgot about this slide. So yeah, I think this is just a summary of the things that we would suggest when you do become familiar with the tools. These are some of the things that will really help. The more we've just noticed, I think Will and I both, the more people that are sort of engaged and kind of watching their data and receive the scorecards on a regular basis are the ones that are finding the issues and preventing energy loss, as well as tightening up schedules and seeing positive energy savings results. So knowing what your baseline is, that's an important one, and that's something you can check with Will on to be sure that you've got the right baseline. You also would want to just schedule some notifications We have the directions on how to do that in the training guide. And if you have any questions on that, you can also contact either Will or myself. And looking at your CUSUM, that's another way to generate, I think, savings kind of momentum. You know, if there are successes in the facility and showing those impacts of those measures in dollars and energy goes a long way. And sharing that information can kind of create energy savings atmosphere and momentum. So those are important things. And yeah, just the immediacy of finding and detecting issues and making the corrections. We've seen people save a lot of money that way. And so taking time to know the tools and setting up the alarms and notifications and interacting with it, all important.
Thank you, Gina. We want to remind you of some of our upcoming webinars and workshops in this series. Our next webinar, if you want to send any of your coworkers who may have missed today or you think might benefit from hearing about the tool, is November the 20th from 10 to 11:30 a.m., not p.m. We won't make you sign in that late in the evening. And then our workshops, live classroom workshops, where you can actually get on the computer and work with the tool, and Gina will be there and Will be there, are November the 13th and November the 14th. So that's definitely worth attending. And before we proceed to the question and answer period, I did want to let you know that we'll send you a follow-up email with a recording of the session, a PDF of the slides, and also the training guide that Will and Gina both mentioned. And right now, I'd like to draw everyone's attention to a polling survey, which I opened in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you could take a few moments to fill this out while we do the question and answers, we really value your feedback, and we will use it to improve future questions. And lastly, I'd like to encourage you all to just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask questions. I have a couple here that people have submitted through chat, but if you have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask it. So Gina, the first question we have is, how do I change my comparison baseline?
Okay, yeah, that would be something you just need to mention to either myself or to Will. Just let us know that you want to change the baseline. Either we have actually a choice of types of baseline as well as the baseline period. So knowing whether you want a fixed baseline or a rolling baseline, and if it's a fixed baseline, you'd want to just let us know what dates you want to change that to. And depending on how many sites you have would determine the time frame in which that would take place. So a single site would take us just a day to enable and reprocess, but for a lot of sites it would take us a little longer to recalculate the results. So just to kind of let you know, if you want to have those, you just need to give us a little time if there are multiple sites involved.
Thanks, Gina. And I was informed here that I neglected to tell you how to unmute yourself. If you would like to unmute yourself, there is a little microphone symbol to the right of your name in the participants window, and you just click on that, and it'll change from red to gray, and then you can speak, and then mute yourself back when you're done. Gina, our next question that we received is, where did the temperatures come from?
Okay, yeah. The weather data that we're using is from weather stations that are selected by zip code. So for most everyone in the PG coverage area, then that's going to be Portland International, but it is an automatic selection based on zip code.
Thanks. Looks like our next question is, how are the carbon emission values for the CUSUM calculated?
Right, the emissions CUSUM uses emissions rates that we get from a report from the EPA that that determines those emissions rate based on zip code again. So we're calculating the consumption and the emissions rate to come up with that cumulative CO2 emissions. And that same goes for the other greenhouse gases. We have emissions rates by location to get that total.
Thanks, Gina. And next question is, can you have more than one person receive an X-Card notification, even if they don't have a login?
Yeah, right on the My Profile application, that's that first one that we went into, and there is an email field that will allow you to enter in multiple email addresses. You just separate them with a semicolon and a space, and that you don't have to be an energy expert user. It can go to any valid email address.
Great, thanks, Gina. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. That was our last question. And I also want to thank Will. And we'll stay online for just a little bit in case any of you want to chat with us. But we hope to see you at one of the workshops or one of your coworkers at the webinars or the workshops. And please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you very much.